Welcome to Portraits of a Nation. Join us as we explore what shapes a country's identity, the people, places, sights and sounds that paint a picture of the world's greatest nations. In 1957, a young, little-known Danish architect won the international competition to design Sydney's new performance centre. Jan Utzon's design is absolutely iconic. The Sydney Opera House is one of the most famous buildings in the world. Located at Bennelong Point in Sydney's famed harbour, it is visually spectacular and a design and engineering masterpiece. The 14 shells, the distinctive sail-like structures, presented serious technical challenges. They were way beyond current engineering capabilities. It took 4 years of design and engineering innovation to enable the realization of the building's most important design features. Although it's the Sydney Opera House, opera is just one aspect of its function. It caters for all kinds of music. It's one of the busiest performing arts centres in the world, with 1,500 performances a year. It contains 6 venues, the 2 largest being the Opera Theatre and the Concert Hall, housing the Grand Organ, the biggest of its kind with over 10,000 pipes. Outside, the monumental steps and large forecourt have been the setting for many major outdoor events. In itself, it's a work of art, its designer clearly considering its impact from every approach, whether from land, sea or air. Viewed from any angle, it's spectacular, with one of the most beautiful harbours in the world as its backdrop, and aided by its companion, the elegant Sydney Harbour Bridge. Jan Utzon's extraordinary creation was formally opened by the Queen in 1963, and in 2007 became the youngest building on the World Heritage List, honoured as one of the indisputable masterpieces of human creativity, not only in the 20th century, but in the history of humankind. Australia's 17th Prime Minister, Harold Holt, was in Parliament for 32 years, but was Prime Minister for just 22 months. During his career, he was responsible for seeing through many major reforms in Australia, but his time as Prime Minister is primarily remembered for 2 controversies. The first of these was Australia's contentious participation in the Vietnam War. Holt was seen as slavishly following the United States, no matter what.
Well, if after consultation with us they were to conduct a course of action, I can't contemplate a contingency in which they would do this, but I don't see it arising as a practical possibility. We think very much, along the same lines as we do along with our British kith and kin. After all, we found ourselves able to join together in most of the struggles that have gone on from perhaps the Boxer Rebellion and the Sudan campaign right through to the present time. And while I understand, I think, the reasons why Great Britain is pursuing the course it is, we are ourselves strongly in support of the action which the United States is taking in the interest, we believe, of free people everywhere.
But Harold Holt would never see the outcome of this war. In December 1967, the experienced and strong swimmer entered the surf at his favourite beach in Portsea, Victoria. Soon after, the already strong seas worsened. Friends saw him struggling and then disappear. An extensive search failed to find his body, and his disappearance remains a mystery. 19 heads of state and of government attended his memorial service, at the time the largest ever gathering of world leaders in Australia.
Mr. Murdoch, now that you're becoming in control of 2 British national papers, do you envisage yourself on the same level as Thompson and Beaverbrook? previous press lords?
No, well, of course, there have been many people who have made great names in Fleet Street as running newspapers and building great newspapers. Well, to that extent, yes. I hope to build a great newspaper out of the Sun.
How do you plan to do that? What innovations are you going to make in the Sun to make it pay?
Oh, well, we're changing the whole paper and changing the whole economy of it, of course. The old Sun was printed in London and Manchester, employed 1,700 people. We're going to employ 900 or less. This has all been done after weeks and weeks of long negotiations with all the unions concerned. We're going to have an entirely different approach to the paper. We're going to try and sell it to the public, which I don't think the Sun has been trying for a long time.
Certainly not short on confidence, Rupert Murdoch proved himself to be a savvy newspaper warrior. He swept through, shaking up the established press, the unions and the public as he applied his unique vision to the world's media.
If you continue to involve yourself in the British press, do you plan to take out a title along the lines of Lord Kemsley or Lord Thomson?
No. I'm an Australian, and I intend to go back and live there one day. And as an Australian, certainly in Australia, I wouldn't believe in the system at all.
I see. Thank you very much, Mr. Murdoch.
The lure of international media ownership, however, saw Murdoch take out US citizenship. Already dominating British newspapers and satellite television, this enabled him to buy American television stations, and he acquired some of the most significant entertainment companies, including 20th Century Fox. Already one of the world's most powerful men, he now aims to expand his reach and influence into the biggest and toughest market for a Westerner, China. Australia's #1 sporting hero was and still remains the Don. Sir Donald Bradman dominated cricket over his 21-year playing career, shattering world records and setting the benchmark for others. He made his first-class debut aged 19, scoring 118 runs. By the age of 21, he'd notched up the highest score in first-class cricket, with 452 runs not out in 415 minutes. Over the years, he continued reaching new heights, including his 100th century. On his last emotional test match, needing just 4 runs to average 100, he was bowled out for a duck, the crowd as shocked as he was. Still, Bradman's test average remains way in front, despite his break of several years for war service and the notorious bodyline test, where English fast bowlers aimed at the batsman rather than the wickets in order to minimise runs.
Cricket is a very peculiar game, as we all know, and it is played throughout the British Empire, but somehow or other it is not favoured in other countries. I don't know why it is that cricket is the one game so true to the taste and the character of English peoples.
In February 1949, Don Bradman strolled onto Sydney Cricket Ground. He had recently become Sir Don, Australia's first and only cricket knight, a fitting recognition for this living legend of the game. This was a significant day, playing his last match on the ground he loved so well. It was here as an 11-year-old that his dream was born, and he had vowed to his father that he would never be happy until he played on this ground. His father would have been proud of him, just like the whole nation. The name says it all. AC/DC is amped up, high voltage rock and roll.
You know, I always like things that, you know, you can tap your foot to, and that's, you know, you've got to have that. You know, you've got to have that ingredient. You've got to have, you know, tracks, I think, that, you know, instantly grab you, and it's got to sound like AC/DC, and, you know, for the people who know you as AC/DC, you want them to be able to say, oh, that's AC/DC and no one else. You know?
The band is phenomenally popular. Worldwide, they've sold more than 200 million albums, and Back in Black is the biggest selling album by a band. Their concert tours pack out the largest venues in the world. A free concert at a Moscow airfield in 1991 attracted an estimated 1 million people. Back home, the band's 2010 Australian tour drew record crowds, with young kids, their parents and grandparents together in the audience. Many had seen AC/DC in the Bon Scott years, as well as with current singer Brian Johnson. Brothers Angus and Malcolm Young formed the band in 1973, and their producer was older brother George, whose Friday on My Mind and Love Is in the Air remain iconic international hits.
Well, I think you would hear a lot, probably from the early years of AC/DC, you would hear a lot. Because George done all the albums that, you know, people started recognising us from. And George always had a great, you know, especially for rock and roll. You know, he was with us, especially in the, you know, the early years. He helped us with all the working in a studio, showing you how to get the best out of a studio, plus giving you the, you know, his knowledge of songcraft.
No doubt AC/DC will electrify audiences for quite some time yet. Since he first set records as a 12-year-old, Ian Thorpe established himself as a truly great swimmer. In a sport that had been dominated for years by America, Thorpe and his teammates proved to be serious medal contenders at the Sydney and Athens Olympics, with intense competition between the two teams.
And we're both very competitive countries in swimming. I mean, we're the #1 and the #2 nations in the world. Yet, as individuals and as team members, I mean, there isn't a rivalry between us. I mean, when we get in and swim, each of us want to do our best on the Australian team, and exactly the same things trying to be done on the US team. And a lot of the time that means we go head to head trying to do that. And, you know, if that's rivalry, I guess it does exist, but in my eyes and in the eyes of most of the swimmers, there's no rivalry. It's just something that is said that exists and, you know, just somewhere in fantasy land.
Rivals or not, the standard of competition certainly pushed swimmers to new levels and extraordinary achievements. Audiences loved it.
Well, for me, I mean, it's not. I never get into who I race against. It's not what kind of encourages me or inspires me to swim well. You know, I just concentrate on what I'm trying to do. So it was of little consequence who was actually in those races. And, you know, I was competing against two of, you know, the best athletes that I've ever come up against in Peter Van den Hoogenband and Michael Phelps. But it would have been irrelevant whether or not they were actually there. So, I mean, it was great that there was so much focus and so much attention on the race. I mean, it was being played out across 3 continents when it was being swum and the rest of the world. And so many people were so passionately behind it. I mean, that was all wonderful. But at the end of the day, it was still the same 200 metres that, I mean, we have to swim at any other competition. It's the same length, the water's the same, you know, nothing else changed. And that's how I approached it, that's how I swum it. And I think in doing that, that's the reason why I was able to be successful at it.
Still at his peak, Thorpe retired in 2006. Larger than life, Steve Irwin made the world sit up and take notice. He was passionate about wildlife, having been brought up surrounded by crocodiles, snakes and other reptiles. At 6, he got a pet python, and by 9 was handling crocodiles under his father's guidance. With his wife, Terry, he took over the running of his parents' property, renaming it Australia Zoo, and embarked on a crusade to educate people about conservation.
Like a lot of apex predators in the world, tigers are on the thin edge of the wedge. They're facing down the barrel of extinction, so we highlight the beauty and fascinate people about them, try to get tigers into people's hearts so as we can save them from the inevitable.
He discovered that television was the perfect medium to spread his message, making films that demystified dangerous animals. His boundless enthusiasm endeared him to millions of people around the world. He was a favourite guest on American chat shows with his uncontained excitement and passion for his subject, a highly wound-up version of Crocodile Dundee, only he was the genuine article.
The power of the media is kind of seeping into children across the world, and so what we have to do is try and saturate it with stuff that is fun and entertaining, and then get in educational messages so as these young people get into young adults and into adulthood, they've got some good quality.
While filming an episode of the series Ocean's Deadliest, Steve Irwin was swimming near some stingrays. Inadvertently, he boxed a large ray in between himself and the cameraman. Feeling threatened, the ray stung him in the chest with its spike. It's believed Irwin removed the barb, which compounded damage to his heart, and this, combined with the ray's toxins, hastened his death. As his parents had taught him, so he also taught his own young children about the animals, anointing them as his successors. Young Bindi and Bob, with their mother, continue Steve Irwin's mission. It's rather surprising to realise that Baz Luhrmann has directed only 4 films, as it feels like he must have made many. He has such an assured touch while daring to take risks, and he's done so right from day one.
He's an unbelievable supporter, has incredible respect for everybody he works with, and it's really a dream come true working with a director like that. He's one of the greats.
Strictly Ballroom, Romeo and Juliet, Moulin Rouge and Australia have all been popular with the public and critics alike.
Well, actually, the honour is the unusual thing. You know, I mean, I'm from a very small country town with 11 houses, so to be at the Museum of Modern Art and to have my films inducted into their catalogue, that doesn't happen every day. It doesn't happen to a boy from Herons Creek every day, and that is an incredible honour.
Baz Luhrmann grew up in a tiny rural town, where his mother taught ballroom dancing and his farming father also ran the local movie theatre. Later, he worked as an actor and established himself as a stage director. In 2003, he returned to theatre, adapting La Bohème for contemporary audiences in a highly successful Broadway production.
They are fundamentally the same. However, when you work in the theatre, you are in a rehearsal room just with a bunch of actors for a bunch of weeks, and with a few props and stuff, you've got to tell story and create magic. And that really is like going back to the gymnasium, you know? It's a healthy experience.
Luhrmann refers to his first 3 films as the Red Curtain Trilogy, designed to totally involve the audience in a Bollywood sense of enjoyment. His next film, Australia, was a big-budget historical epic. Although initial reactions were mixed, it has become the second highest grossing Australian film at the local box office, boosting Australia's reputation as a breeding ground for film talent.
Yeah, no, I think actually that is a result of a bit of vision by our forefathers many years ago to put money into culture and into film schools and into drama schools. That's actually why it happened.
Cate Blanchett's rise to film stardom was, by every standard, rapid. Only 6 years after graduating from drama school, she was Oscar-nominated and a Golden Globe winner for her lead role in Elizabeth. Along the way, she landed solid parts in prestigious theatre productions, had regular television roles, and had played major parts in movies alongside established actors like Frances McDormand and Ralph Fiennes. To her credit, she's taken it all within her stride.
Well, she's an awfully big cheese, of course, but she's also a most delightful person, and I'm really happy to be in a film with her.
Because I saw Kate in her final year at drama school and was, you know, just as an audience member, completely astonished by her capabilities. And then the following year we got to do a play together and we did some more theatre. And then 10 years ago we ended up on a soundstage at Shepperton, dressed as Queen Elizabeth I of Walsingham and going, how did we get here? What happened?
She's still young, yet already has a depth of work that would make many actors envious.
Every single person I know in some way has felt that they've let themselves down. They felt that they've missed an opportunity. And I know a lot of people, and I felt, you know, my early part of my 20s, I felt like things were slipping away from me. And, you know, when you come out of drama school and you don't start working, I mean, not to the extent that Tracy has, obviously, but I think everyone can relate to that. And it's how you pick yourself up that's a testament to your character. And I find her struggle, all the characters' struggles, really endearing and heartbreaking.